Looks like everyone's here. You're good to go, you guys. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Bonnie. All right, let's get started here. The first order of business on the agenda is approval of February 25th, 2021 minutes.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, they pass. Second item on the list is the Van Gaskin Park update. And we're gonna get a presentation for that.
And Dan, I don't know, Chair Nutting, did we want to take the Redondo?
Yeah, let's take the Redondo item first, if we could, Chair.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
You okay? Yep, okay. Go.
Brandon and Andrew, take it away.
Andrew, oh, he's just starting to share his screen here.
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me and see the my screen here?
Sure, looks good.
All right, perfect. Yeah, good evening, council committee members. Andrew Murgis, city engineer. And this evening or this afternoon, I'd like to review the update for the Redondo restroom design that we're going through right now. Really quick, on the sheet right here, project background. As everybody knows, it's a 30-plus-year-old structure on deteriorating wood piles and exposed utilities. It's been kind of a maintenance nightmare, and it's the piles out there are not going to last too much longer. The project itself, the redoing of the Redondo restroom, has been in the CIP since 2016, so we've kind of known it's coming, and now we're lucky to be in design on that. And in the CIP, it always talks about moving it across the street and get it off the waterfront out there. As everybody knows as well, there's broad regional user groups, recreational divers, business patrons, local community. And if everybody remembers back when we did the Redondo boardwalk, we did a study out there that shows that there's 300 plus pedestrians per hour utilizing the boardwalk / that promenade facility during peak summer use times. Now, getting into the architectural design that we've worked on so far as a team with our consultant, the location framework, we spent some time trying to figure out where's the best place for the restroom. A couple ideas that we looked at were trying to keep the restroom within a range of acceptable walking distance. And what that means is the further away you get it from a high use area, the less people will probably use it. So we're within 100 feet, which is kind of an acceptable range for public use. We wanted to reduce the impact and capacity of the existing parking lot as much as we can, so we don't have to redo too much civil wise, as well as all the urban amenities that are existing out there, including the intersection with the urban features on the one corner. As well as we looked at the future pier and looked at where's the restroom from a visual and a contextual perspective, the best location. And we decided that the restroom can act as kind of like a terminus of the pier access and the promenade for pedestrians, kind of creating a nice pedestrian corridor and network to the paid parking to try to, take advantage of all the users using the parking for the waterfront facilities. Now, the architecture that we looked at, we wanted to discourage undesirable behavior. We've heard a lot of that through the years. We've gone to a gender neutral facility similar to the North bulkhead restrooms, which is kind of becoming more common in the Seattle metro area now. The doors open out. We've got opaque windows with motion detectors, so if folks have locked themselves in after hours, things like that. It's a little bit of a security feature on that. We've got stalls on both sides of the building, so we don't create kind of a backside or an area for people to congregate that people can't see. We also have put the parking kiosk, the diver wash, and the boat wash kind of all together in the immediate vicinity, so everybody can kind of keep an eye on it or kind of really recognize if someone's out there that shouldn't be out there. We also have on the restroom facility concession facility, kind of like we did on the North bulkhead restroom as well, to serve whether it be private or public use or whatever use may occur in there. That could even include future security measures like during high use times or big public events. you know, maybe city staff or city security folks can use that as kind of a staging ground to help out with some of those big events, et cetera, down there. We did do a little bit of public outreach for about a 3-week period. We had an online public survey based on the architectural concepts that we came up with. There were approximately about 30 submissions, plus I received a few phone calls and emails along well with that. The architectural concepts, we've got one preferred configuration, which is a flat roof design, which most folks kind of gravitated towards kind of a more modern look. We kind of threw out a couple of different materials, different colors on that. But in general, the preferred configuration was by far the greatest accepted alternative we threw on the table there. And I'll show those in just a second here. A lot of public comment came in, a lot of comments on the location in the parking lot, undesirable, really focusing on security and safety and illicit activity and some noise concerns out there. So really not as much as say where the restroom is versus how do we secure it or what security enhancements can we provide out there to make it just a better area to be in overall. There's comments on implementing secured parking similar to North Marina, a gate style, so you can ensure that it's closed off in the evening hours. There's also some comments about increased parking to accommodate the amount of users down there or reduce the availability for non-local users. The location should be in Wooten Park. That was another comment. We did look at that a little bit. From our perspective, going back to the range of acceptable walking distance, trying to move the restroom that far away would probably entice a lot of people to utilize the beach in ways that we would not like them to use. And then a lot of comments on just get the restroom bulkhead and pier completed and get those facilities back open. And I kind of want to make a quick comment before I go into the architectural drawings a little bit on back in 2015, if folks remember, we did a Redondo parking management plan for about a year outreach with the public to kind of identify from a public infrastructure perspective, what are the desires and needs down in the Redondo area. And I do have a quick snippet of a couple of those projects. Let me find it really quick here, right here. And what was interesting when I looked back at this parking management plan and looked at the public comments, especially around safety and security, there's a lot of projects in here that would be great to do concurrently with the restroom to kind of solve or try to solve security and safety problems kind of at the same time. And the ones that really stand out are at the top of the list, kind of like the metered parking zones, which would be on the streets, the paid parking facility upgrades of the actual parking lot itself, looking at street signs, which we've done through the past couple of years here, street lights, driver feedback signs for speed, consolidation of crosswalks, as well as enhancements to the Redondo Beach Drive and Redondo Way intersection. So what I found fascinating was a lot of the comments are kind of ongoing. We've taken a lot of the comments from 2015. We still kind of see the need, and there may be opportunity coming up in the future to kind of do a couple improvements at the same time as funds become available to implement these projects. Now, moving on to the preferred alternative of the restroom design that was accepted out there. It has the flat roof style, 4 stalls, unisex stalls based on kind of the demand and talking with Scott Wilkins and the existing restrooms down there. We have an outdoor wash-off shower area primarily or specifically for the diving community. They were requesting some type of facility to wash off, be able to put their gear down, be able to load their cars, etc. So we kind of made a little space for that. We didn't make a closet style for safety issues. We kind of kept it open so people can still visually see it, so people can't hide back there. Like I mentioned before, we've got the community bulletin board, parking kiosk, and the concession stand as well. And on the 3-dimensional graphics, you can kind of see the concession stand with the windows versus a metal kind of roll-up garage style window. as well as that prominent Redondo side or the Redondo sign. And when you look at the overall layout of the restroom, that lines up directly in line with the center line of the fishing pier. So when we talk about kind of a pier viewing access point, it's kind of a bookend to the bookend of the pier itself. So a really nice pedestrian corridor kind of ties it all in together. Other options we looked at were the preferred configuration, but alternate materials. So like I said before, more of a color scheme change. And then option 4 and 5 was a different design, kind of still concession stand, still kind of same layout, but using a peaked roof instead of the flat roof. It's a little bit more traditional design on that one. And then the last sheet that I had in the packet as well kind of shows, to the best we could do it at this time, kind of where the restroom would
You're
go within the
breaking
parking lot.
up.
Oh, was there someone talking or a question? Okay, yeah, so the three-dimensional drawing there to your right kind of shows that we're utilizing that existing pedestrian space next to the boat wash and the current kiosk that's out there, in trying to minimize the impact to the parking. In this case, we're probably taking about 3 stalls to kind of make it work, versus trying to redo the whole parking lot to accommodate a facility out there. So it really is in line with the crosswalk, the future pier, and right off the end of the boardwalk to try to get that 300 plus users to utilize the parking lot and the restrooms. The graphic to the left is kind of our site circulation as we kind of did our iterations of design to kind of think through who's going to be using it, how are we going to use it, and then how are pedestrians going to access each part of that facility out there. And kind of like I mentioned before, the concession stand faces the waterfront, a little bit of pedestrian node there for people to congregate, do whatever out there, then be able to use the restrooms to the sides as well on each side. And that's kind of all I have from a presentation perspective. I'd like to open it up to questions at this point to talk through any piece of this.
Andrew, I just want to make a comment really quick. So at this point, just to clarify, we're working on, we have funding to deal with the design for the pier and the restroom. And we're in the process of trying to secure construction funding for both of those projects. We've been working with the legislature this session. Hope to have some news on that soon. One of the things that we were talking about, and you mentioned it earlier, was implementing a paid parking system, perhaps at the same time that the restroom goes in. Is that kind of what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I think, if funds are available, and like you mentioned, Dan, I mean, these projects aren't currently funded right now for construction. We're working on design and permitting, but the one, major improvement that I think would have a huge benefit that the public kind of recognizes, as well as that parking management plan we did back in 2015, is to really look at the security of the parking lot and kind of have an upgrade to the paid parking system with gates out there to have a lot more control on the parking lot. And having the restroom located internally in that parking lot provides another added benefit with a gated system where if security is there at night, et cetera, they also have eyes on that restroom building, not just the parking lot itself. So I think those parking lot paid parking improvements, I think would just be a great project to tie in with the restrooms when funding becomes available on this.
Yeah. So council members, one of the things that we were talking about earlier this week, Brandon and Andrew and I and Scott, one of a potential funding source for some of these improvements could be, if we put in the restroom and the paid parking system, we could look at increasing the parking fees to help fund some of these improvements. And that can also have an effect of kind of perhaps balancing the volume of people that would be willing to come down there. We could, these are just some ideas that we were kicking around. We haven't thought through any of that in detail, but perhaps if the fees were more expensive in the parking lot and have a pay on enter kind of a scenario, we can eliminate some of the issues that we've heard about recently. So just some ideas. Council, if you have any questions, fire away.
Yeah, another quick comment, really quick, Dan, on that as well. On the paid parking improvements, another identified option as well on that parking management plan is probably around the same time you look at upgrading the parking lot itself, you'd probably start looking at a paid parking system on Redondo Way, for instance, to really provide a more broad control from a rate perspective and a use perspective that can maybe help deter some of the unwanted activities down there. And the Redondo parking management plan does have a lot of explanation on kind of rate setting, cost, things like that. So it's some good information that we can use for planning to move forward on that.
Chair Nutting, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So just a quick follow-up. So the House capital budget in Olympia allocated $350,000 for this project. The Senate has allocated 900,000. So there'll be some meeting in the middle relative to this. There's some other legislative accomplishments. We were able to get $50,000 of mitigation money for the airport, and some other things that we'll update you with. Mr. Hempstead will be sending out a summary at some point, but it was just relevant to this presentation.
Yeah,
Thank
Michael,
you.
if I can clarify on that, just so the council knows, the appropriations that will probably come through at some level are directed only for the fishing pier replacement itself, but not the restroom building.
Fair enough. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
So
Deputy Mayor Mahoney, I saw your hand, and sorry, Louisa, you just jumped back on. So we'll go Mahoney and then you.
I'm fine with letting Louisa go first.
Okay. Councilmember Banks.
So a lot of the questions were answered that I have had, but remind me, there is money in place for this restroom replacement, number one, and number two, the Redondo Way parking, are we talking about meters? Are we talking about paying at a kiosk and putting it in the window? I mean, people down there are truly concerned about the fact they cannot get parking for their own homes. And two, of course, as we know, spring's coming. And then we're going to have all the revelers down there, for lack of a better word at this point.
Yes, to answer, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, let me take this. The type of machinery for the parking system on Redondo Way, we haven't had any discussions per se about what that would be, whether it be pay and display or a coin operated kind of machine or anything like that. But we certainly would have to deal, whatever we do with the parking lot, we have to deal with Redondo Way and Soundview Drive as well. And in addition to that, we've talked all along about the need to manage the neighborhood. We can't have overflow of people coming down to use the public infrastructure and parking in the residential area. So all of that would have to be managed and worked through. But yes, our intent would be to deal with paid parking on the public street as well, but not in the neighborhood, just in Redondo Way and Soundview Drive. So
Got it.
and one of the there is not construction, there's no construction funding for the parking system or the restroom at this point. We'll get something, it sounds like, for the pier, but we're gonna have to have some discussions about finding ways to fund the construction of these improvements.
Thanks, Dan.
Deputy Mayor Mahoney.
Thank you, Councilmember Nutting. So a few of the comments I heard about was moving the restrooms even further into the northwest corner. Andrew, I heard you give the arguments about the fact that we have to alter parking, take up probably more than 3 spaces. But did you look at that as a possibility?
Yes, we did. So, one of the big impacts is just that circular parking we have down there, and the restroom would make that kind of obsolete. So you'd have to kind of redo the whole, single vehicle parking space down there. But more importantly, we had a team with urban designers and architects on board. One was, you push it further away from the boardwalk, that just gets into your probably less use. But in that corner itself, there was a lot of discussion on the team about the appropriateness of the type of building on the corner, on that intersection as a gateway into the Redondo area. And the restroom kind of just doesn't fit that style or what you'd like to see down there. And it would probably overpower any type of urban design features or amenities or future amenities you would build down there. Instead of looking at the intersection in adjacent property from an urban design perspective and kind of a true gateway down there. Also, we looked at it and it looked, from a traffic perspective or use perspective, it definitely increases pedestrian congestion. Where we have it proposed there, you have one crosswalk, basically 1 or 2 lanes of traffic to kind of watch and manage. At the intersection, now you have 3 legs of an intersection as pedestrians to manage with vehicles. So just a little bit more crowded in a lot less space than right across from the pedestrian promenade next to the fishing pier out there. Where we have it is kind of more centrally located to that high use boardwalk. Has a little bit more access to Wooten Park, as people park there, etc. And then we also looked at it as like I mentioned before, it kind of serves as that anchor for the fishing pier and boardwalk. It kind of provides that little bit of a bookend to kind of really create that pedestrian space out there. So we did look at it. We looked at the restroom, even moving it a little bit more just to the west, closer to Redondo Beach Drive, but taking out all that public infrastructure already built, that urban design amenities, and pulling it further from the parking a little bit. It just didn't make too much sense to get rid of that nice decorative feature that we currently have out there, which is this. It was nice just to kind of think about a corridor and placing the restroom more or less kind of where the gentleman's standing and the current kiosk / informational booth is currently out there.
Okay, next question. Now, I know we have these dilemmas. We have the dilemma of locking bathrooms where inappropriate conduct can happen in them. And then we also have the problem with the new gender identity issues we have to address. Are you seeing the way a lot of the bathrooms are being designed today as individual units to accommodate all groups rather than building, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 different accesses and the cost incurred? What are you seeing as options there, other than the one you showed here, or what your argument would be for that?
Yeah, so in general, we had a good discussion, internally with staff and with the architects, and regionally, kind of like I mentioned before, most restroom facilities that are public nowadays are going unisex, gender neutral to accommodate all users, as well as there's really strong advocacy from families to have kind of individual stalls with doors on them so they can go in there with their children, etc., who may be of a different gender to use those facilities. I know, I chatted with King County a little bit. I know a lot of their park facilities in King County are all unisex now, not gender specific. So it's kind of the trend and kind of what people are looking for. As far as people locking themselves in there, the biggest thing that we worry about is someone locking themselves in there after hours and not being able to handle that. And, the couple of things we've looked at on this restroom are opaque windows above the doors with motion detectors. So lights would shine on. So if there's a person after hours, someone may notice the lights on, be able to call security, be able to take care of those issues. So we've kind of looked at, okay, what do we do with doors that actually do lock, and how do we manage that from a security perspective? And it looks like, from what's around the area regionally, this is becoming more of the accepted trend with folks. Easier maintenance as well, too.
Okay, couple of comments. being a scuba diver, I love the idea of the showers, and I like how you have it unblocked, because most of us are going to be wearing our gear and be able to wash off our gear one shot. It's going to be well received for that particular group. The retail space, had a question. I know like a coffee shop or something like that might be ideal there, but would you consider maybe possibly making it two smaller retail spaces? I've had a few of the dive shops talk to me, and they would be interested in co-leasing one of the sides to run their lessons and information out of.
Yeah, I'd have to chat with the architects. I don't know what type of building standards they have to abide by as far as space. I mean, the restroom itself, the building, even the footprint, this is a pretty small facility. So as far as how do you segregate out two spaces in that concession area, it may be one of those where you can put up like a temporary wall inside or something like that. I know that the glass windows on there are kind of too sliding from each side, so there's that potential of it. But I can pose that to the architect. But like I said, I don't know the ins and outs of building code design.
Okay,
We'll look into the feasibility of that
yeah,
and report
that's all I
back.
ask, is look into it. I see the potential to get two renters and serve a couple needs.
Mhm.
The last one is, I agree that if we can, when we do this, we do the paid parking. I would strongly urge that if we can combine both the Marina Pass and the Redondo Pass as one for those season pass users, I think it'd give an incentive for more people to buy them. But I just add that in. Thank you.
Thank you. First off, I'd like to say that in committee meetings, this is not time where we take any questions from public or anything like that. It's for council members to get the idea. Public comments come when it comes to the dais and or public outreach. I think most of the questions have been answered by people that have emailed in today. The next opportunity would be for public outreach and for when there is a public hearing on this and we move forward with it. So thank you to the public that showed up today, but that's not what committee meetings are for. Louisa, I'll give you a few more minutes, but in the interest of time, we have to get ready to move on, or else we're not going to get through the whole agenda tonight.
I think we have until
it's really
5
quick.
o'clock, don't we? This
Yes, we
meeting
do, but we
yeah.
have another two presentations, and one of them's almost an hour long.
All right. So quickly, can you explain to me what this, between the two public restroom sides and the concession, what does the service mean? What is that alleyway there?
That's
can-
for basically service, utilities, everything that we would do for maintenance. So not a public space. That's more for operation.
Maintenance of the plumbing.
Thank you.
All right, staff, is there anything else you would like to add?
There is one thing Councilmember Nutting, on the council agenda for this item specifically, I was kind of looking for or trying to achieve, and maybe tonight's not the time, but concurrence on the design alternative to move the permitting and design forward on this.
I see a head nod from Deputy Mayor Mahoney and agreeance with Louisa. My only comment for the whole thing is, well, two, thank you very much for the time spent on this. And I'm glad that if I remember right, it pretty much mimics what we're trying to achieve on the North Bulkhead with the remake of the restrooms down there. And I'm glad that we have, we're going to look conjoined and uniform throughout the city. It's a good place to be. So yeah, yes, move forward if that wasn't clear.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to, are we going with the Van Gasken update or are we going with the Marina master plan?
Chair Nutting, I'm going to do just a real brief Van Gasken update. The screen is shared there. You can kind of see an aerial image of what the park would look like. So just real briefly, part of this is review. We have the park and the expanded deck where the house currently sits. It's actually going to expand a little bit further west in the house footprint. A really nice platform is planned there. The garage would also be removed. So a couple of changes, not changes, but necessary updates. We are currently in the last phases of design. We did add this deck platform, and we have to do some modifications to the garage pad to make it ADA compliant. That's where we're going to put couple of parking stalls, ADA compliant parking stalls that are a requirement for the grant that we received. So on April 8th, there'll be a small design addendum coming to the full council under consent with our current consultant.
No, that's free.
And so we're just, as far as project update, we're in the starting the SEPA process. Our cultural resources permitting has been in with Department of Architectural and Historic Preservation, DAHP, for short. That comment should be due back on April 5th, and we expect a permit from them. This would include tribal concurrence of the site the second week of April. And then we're going to move into decommissioning some of the utilities, gas and sewer towards the end of April, with a desired bid date at late April, early May, as we complete the design. And our current construction cost estimates running just over 1 million. But obviously when we go out to bid, we'll get a real number there. But that's really sort of the update in short. Happy to take a quick question if we have time.
Real quick, as far as the
ahead.
design of the park and so forth, we'll have conversations at a later date, is what you're saying. Just the reason why I do is on the Fifth Avenue portion, I had a few people reach out to me. They like the look and feel, but they were looking for fencing there between Fifth and the park, just because of the people down that particular street and some of the interaction that might be there. That was all.
Well, we might be able to, the entrance to Fifth, we might be able to design in more of a driveway type approach. Yeah, we haven't got to the detail of fencing off the park, so to speak. No, most of our parks are not fenced, similar to Overlook there to the south. We kind of envisioned it would operate much like that, but we'll take the security questions and under review as we move forward, for sure.
Okay, thank you. That's all I can ask.
All right. Thank you. It looks great with what we can do. It'd be nice to get the black plastic off of there and the sandbags one of these days. So thanks, staff. That moves us forward to the Marina Master Plan update.
Hi. Oh, Dan's sharing the screen. Thank you, Chair Mr. Nutting and Councilmember Bangs and Deputy Mayor Mahoney. Thank you. We're going to do a quick PowerPoint this evening. Dan's going to orchestrate that for us and everything else. We'll do a little recap of what we did last month, and then we'll go into some new works and stuff like that. I'm going to defer most to Katie here early because I missed this beginning of this meeting last month, and so I'm going to let Katie take over this part. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do the recap. You guys can hear me, right? Okay, maybe, yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, we can.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the recap. Dan, are you? Dan?
Uh-oh.
Dan?
Oh,
there we go.
Thank you.
Okay, so last month, some of the things that we did is we reviewed the zones, the different marina zones, the marina zone specifically, waterfront zone, Redondo zone. We reviewed the Reed-Middleton condition report where they assessed all of our dock structures and infrastructure. We presented the initial draft of marina improvement plan. and discuss the master plan schedule and steps. Next steps. So the purpose of our presentation today is to introduce the 4 policy questions we have for you related to covered moorage, slip sizes and our slip mix, dry stack storage, as well as the reconstruction of the dry sheds for a multi-purpose structure. We're going to proceed with recruitment for our engineering and architectural services, and then an update on our marina improvement plan. Okay, we showed this at the last presentation just to kind of overview of where the waterfront zone and marina zone is. Redondo kind of speaks for itself. So all that blue area is our waterfront, or excuse me, the marina zone. That's the marina zone, and which is the enterprise fund. And then that smaller square down there is the waterfront zone, which also incorporates the beach park and the Van Gaskin area. And then changes, we went over this before. So the marina is 50 years old. There's many elements that are definitely past reaching their end of life service. The existing systems don't meet the present day building codes, and existing and water construction are also environmentally unfriendly. There's too many small slips and too few large slips. We're not meeting the current demand of the boating industry, and it's not ideal for projected future demand. So we're preparing to make some significant capital reinvestments. This was part of the Reed-Middleton report, the condition assessment. We highlighted that the majority of the docks fell between the fair and poor conditions, which means that they had some advanced deterioration. As soon as they get past that point, they end up in a serious condition to where they're almost unusable. So we're at a point that a lot of these docks need some major attention and repair. These were the tiers that we presented. We'll go more into this a little later, but the tier 1, within the 5 to 10 tier, that's the Redondo, or excuse me, the tenant restrooms. It's the replacement and removals of the worst condition docks. M&M were one of the worst, EF and G also one of the worst, and the smaller ones. The dry sheds and the storage lot, those need to kind of get updated and replaced. Our electrical system upgrades south of CSR. And then the tier 2 and tier 3 kind of go into some of the other ones, but we'll be focusing mostly on the tier 1 right now. To give you an idea of where those docks were, the N&M dock, you can see where the fishing pier is in the Enterprise Fund area. That is the ones closest to the north end of the marina. And then the EF and G docks, those are 20, excuse me, those docks are a little backwards, I just realized. Those are 20s and 24-foot slips, so the smaller ones. And then, oh yeah, the master planning work, some of our policy issues for the covered moorage. The covered moorage is popular with boaters. Everybody likes the protection from the elements and everything that goes on in the water. Some of the competing interests, however, are the view corridor impacts, environmental, permitting is a massive one, costs and risk are some pretty big heavy hitters on those competing interests. Our goal is to retain as much as we possibly can, but the reality is that there's going to be less. I don't know if Dan or Scott want to jump in either.
Oh, I can jump real quick. As Katie said, some of the goals is to retain as much covered moorage as possible. With the permitting aspects and some of the new changes and everything, that'll be that'll be way on that a little bit hard, and also the construction costs themselves. So we'll just have to wait and see what some numbers are.
All right, another policy issue we want to introduce tonight is the idea of transitioning from the smaller slips to larger slips, more 40 and 50 foot slips. This seems to be consistent with the boating industry trends, moving to larger boats. This was something that Mark Bunzel had identified in his first report, and I think that he'll expand more on in the report that's due out soon. There's other not just boating industry trends, there's financial benefits to the city for moving to more larger slips. So in this table here, I've got some of the revenues that we received over the last 2 years for E&F docks and M&N docks. So E&F docks house smaller boats, 20 to 24 foot range, and M&N docks are 40 and 50 foot range. So you can see the revenue that we get off of each of these docks, and the conclusion, which is very easy to see, is that the docks with larger boats generate twice the revenue for the marina. And not to mention that we have waiting lists for the larger slips, and we have vacancies for the smaller slips. So those are some of the reasons why we're at least exploring this idea. We're still evaluating the slip mix, and Mark will have some recommendations for us when the phase 2 report comes out. And we'll talk about that later. But generally speaking, you'll see in the table on the left, on the right side of the screen, you can see the current configuration of our slips. We have 730 slips by size. You can see the number of them, and the red block at the top is kind of the main cluster of the majority of our slips in that smaller range. And so to the extent that we can transition that to be more kind of flip-flop this, that will add revenue to the marina. So just conceptually, that's kind of what we're looking at doing. Specifically, one of the things we're going to talk about later on is we plan to move forward with some preliminary engineering work for the replacement of M and N docks. This was the priority that was established with the condition assessment report. The nice thing about these docks is they're currently 40 and 50 foot slips. And the landside infrastructure has already been upgraded in front of these docks. So that picture in the upper right corner, you can see the promenade and the seawall has already been rebuilt to the south of M dock. So to the extent that we rebuild these docks and the approaches to the docks, we won't have to come back later and redo it if we did other docks first that are further south, where we still have some bulkhead work to do. The other nice thing about moving forward with M and N dock replacements, this will allow us to do a test of the permitting issues that we're going to face on the rest of the covered moorage in the marina. So to the extent that we start the permitting process, which we want to start that later this year, as we run into roadblocks, we'll understand more about what we're going to face in the other parts of the marina, and if we can actually permit covered moorage. With the permitting work that we're running into with the fishing pier in Redondo, I'm highly skeptical that we'll be able to actually permit any covered moorage, but that we'll seek to provide what we can. And assuming that we actually can put back what is shown here in this picture, we'll understand what the costs of that covered moorage will be. And before, as we move forward with the design, we'll have a pretty good idea of what the new rates would be for the slips on those docks. And we can, before we go to construction, see if tenants are willing to pay what it's going to cost for new covered moorage. If the tenants aren't willing to pay the cost of what it's going to be, then we can move forward with uncovered moorage at that time. So that it's a way for us to kind of test the waters before we move forward with design on the and permitting on the rest of the covered moorage. Another policy issue we want to introduce to you tonight is this a concept of dry stack storage. So if we transition from smaller slips to larger slips, the result of that is you got to have wider fairways between the docks to accommodate the movement of larger boats. In order to accommodate wider fairways, the only way to fit that in the current marina is to remove some of the docks. So some possibility would be removal of E and F or EF and G. Just depends on how much space we need. And remember, E and F dock are the docks that house smaller boats, 20 to 24 foot boats. So the goal with dry stack storage is to retain the small boats in the marina by moving them into a storage facility like this. And the idea would be, if you had a small boat in storage here, if you call Scott and Katie a day ahead of time, they can move your boat from the storage facility down into the receiving area down on the water, have it fueled up, serviced, and ready to go when you show up the next day. This would
Is there
allow
a
us to.
cost for that, Dan?
What's that?
Would there be a cost for someone to request this?
Well, yes.
There,
Yeah, and we haven't looked at what the cost of that service would be, but the storage of the boats in this facility, we would lease these spaces out just like we lease storage on the water, and we would set rates consistent with the market throughout the sound area where there's other storage like this.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
May I real quick, Dan?
Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Councilmember Banks. Typically on a lot of these areas like this, you pay your rent and you get so many launches built into that rent. And then there's a charge above that. And that's how it works out there most of the time.
Great. That's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is something we've talked a little bit about with Mark, and they've got done some research on this. I think we'll hear more about this kind of service and opportunity when his report comes out. We think that there's opportunities for us to do some of this in a marina facility, but there's also opportunities to perhaps engage with the private sector, perhaps doing some public-private partnerships. We could even talk more with the Des Moines Yacht Club.
Yeah.
Maybe there's opportunities for them to expand some of their services as well. So anyway, this is something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as a way to keep the small boats that we have in the marina on the water, but in the marina itself as we transition the water side of the marina. The last issue we want to talk to you about tonight, as far as a kind of a policy related question, has to do with the dry sheds. Those white buildings that are just south of the harbor master's office. We think that there's an opportunity to rebuild those dry sheds into something that we'll call a multi-purpose building. We will come up with a slicker name for that here soon, but the idea is to retain revenues that we currently get from the dry sheds by accommodating storage in this multi-purpose building. And we want to create additional revenue from this building to to do two other things. One, to finance the building construction itself, but to produce other revenue that the marina needs in order to do the capital improvements beyond M and N dock. And I'll talk about that in a little bit here, a little bit more. So potential new revenue streams in this multi-purpose building could be marine manufacturing or a showroom, like shown over here on the right. You could do boat sales. You could have some office space or retail. You could build in some restaurants into this building. Of course, the boat storage that we just talked about, there's an image up there of kind of another facility where they're moving boats from storage into the water. We can build in the year-round waterside farmers market that we've talked about with Robert Holmes and some of the work that Skylabs has done. You know, the idea with this multi-purpose building is that it would dovetail in with the other marina redevelopment that Michael and Robert have been talking with the council about. We would fit this in with the marina steps, and we'd also accommodate the integrated footpath that was presented. I'll show you an image of that in a second, but the idea, before I show you some of these other images, is that we also don't want to block views of the condos that are right above here. So that's certainly something we understand and would accommodate in the design. So you may remember this, these pictures. This was the work that Skylabs had helped us with here not too long ago, and the idea of some kind of a hotel or facility that's located on this upper left picture with the marina steps that come down, and the idea of having a pathway that would meander also down to get to the marina floor. And at the base of that, you see kind of the concept of, you know, some building, a farmer's market, maybe a restaurant, something like that. So these were concepts that have been developed over the last couple of years. And, you know, as we look at the dry sheds and the need to generate revenue, one of the things that we want to be able to explore is this multi-purpose structure. So on this graphic, you can see the current dry sheds kind of underneath that blue hatched area. The concept here would be that the blue area represents a single story kind of a facility. The pink would be 2 stories, and the green over in that upper corner, and this is just approximate showing, it's not meant, it's just to give you the idea, but that would be, the idea would be to have the green, the top of that structure be even with Overlook Park, so that you could walk and connect to Overlook and walk down through, and we would build into the roof system of this structure that meandering pathway and bring that down to the promenade and build in some coffee shops, perhaps some restaurants. The idea would be underneath the green and the pink area, we would have that dry stack storage of the boats inside this structure. So you wouldn't, the people in the condos, you wouldn't see any of that going on. The CSR boat yard would be unimpacted by this. They would still remain functioning just the same way they are today. You can see that there's also a little orange strip that's to the south of that pink area. The idea here would be that there's along the bluff there's still more area that we could do boat storage, stack storage there. And the fence along the south side of CSR, the idea might be to extend that across so that that boat storage would be secure. And CSR could even help us. We could contract with them to help us with moving boats out of storage and into the water. They have access to the travel lift. So conceptually, just kind of something that we're thinking about for this area. And as I mentioned before, the idea is the back of that building, if the roof would not extend above the bluff, we wouldn't want to impact the views from the condos. And the idea is to gradually have the roof line actually ramp up as it gets closer to Overlook Park. I do want to go back to this slide real quick. So here you can see this development is what we'll call kind of the south development. The marina steps and the hotel and some of the other things that Robert Holmes and Michael and others have been working on would be just to the north of this. So these would fit right together with the theme that the council's seen in various presentations over the last couple of years. So these would fit with the work that Skylabs and others have been working on. So why is this multi-purpose structure so crucial for the marina? The reality is we have some current debt. We have some 2012 bonds that will be paid off next year. Early next year, we'll be able to retire that debt. The current annual debt service for those bonds is part of the marina budget currently. It's been part of the marina budget for the last 10 years or more. The idea is to reissue debt to pay for the dock replacements of M&N docks, hopefully one more. Hopefully we could get three docks done. We have enough capital that we can probably bond for $6 to $7 million and to do those dock replacements. And then it'll take us 20 years to pay that debt off using the current debt service that we're currently paying. So the problem here is that the condition assessment report that Katie referred to earlier, all of our infrastructure is showing to be out of useful service within the next 10 to 15 years. So the marina needs more capital. It needs more revenue to help fund the other dock replacements. It needs capital to extend the bulkhead to the south beyond what's already been done. And so we think that a multi-purpose building like this can generate, we hope that it could generate enough revenue to help spur and fuel other capital investments on the water side of the marina. So some of the tier 2 capital investments that Katie mentioned earlier in the presentation. So conceptually, that's the idea. So what we plan to do over the next month and a half or so is to begin to recruit and select an engineer that will help us put together preliminary designs for M&N dock reconstruction. And the idea would be to get to 10%, maybe 15% level design, enough where we can start the permitting work. That's really what we want to get to. We want to start on the permitting work for those docks. And usually if we have a 10 to 15% level design, that's enough to get you started on the permitting. So we want to start on that. And we want to look to get an architectural firm on board that can help us take some of the renderings that you've seen and begin to put those into more actual building plans where we could identify the space that's needed for like dry stack storage, storage lockers, that rebuilding the dry sheds, accommodating the farmer's market on the frontage. How can we fit all of that into this building? We're asking a lot out of this building. The idea is to get to a place where we could run some pro forma to determine, is capital investment in this structure going to return more revenue than the debt service to build it. And so that's what we're hoping. And so we're going to work on that here over the next few weeks to select these firms. The other item I wanted to just touch on really quickly here. So last month we presented an initial draft of our marina improvement plan, and it was kind of tier 1, 2, and 3. We kind of grouped projects by those priorities. Over the last several weeks, Scott and Katie and I have been starting to put the projects in a kind of a more familiar format. This format should look pretty familiar to the council. We use this improvement plan spreadsheet for our transportation projects. Plan to use the same kind of format for the marina projects. The idea is to list every project, every capital project that needs to occur in the marina, prioritize them, and then begin to populate. Right now, we don't have any of the costs filled in, but we would begin to fill in some estimated costs for these projects. We have taken a first crack at putting in a scope for these projects. It's not set in stone or anything like that. We just want to be able to have some things that when we go to the public here soon, they have something to provide some feedback on. So we'll take our best shot at it. And then we want to talk with stakeholders about priorities and scopes for some of these projects. And then we'll be continuing to talk with the committee and the council over the next several months about these as we prepare to bring the master plan forward this fall. I got 2 slides left here, and then we're going to open it up for some discussion here. So next steps. The very next thing that's due to happen is Mark Bunzel's phase 2 report is scheduled to be published, if you will, next week. We'll have that report up on the Marina Master Plan website, and the public will be able to go in there, and stakeholders, and download that report, review that. We'll also have a format where people can provide comments and questions, feedback, concerns. We plan to have Mark come to the council meeting on April 8th, give us a presentation of what's in his report. He'll present that to the council. We're going to ask for some initial feedback from those that can provide it by April 12th, and we'll collate the comments and feedback that we get from the community on the report. We have a public meeting scheduled for the 14th. Mark will talk about his report, and then we will answer some of the more common questions or concerns that we get from the public at that meeting. That'll be a Zoom meeting that people can attend, and we'll respond to those questions that we get in writing before that meeting. Doesn't mean that the comment period ended or anything like that. People can give us feedback all the way through this process. Then our plan is to come back to this committee next month and kind of summarize some of the feedback that we've gotten so far from the DMMA, the tenants, and other stakeholders. And then we'll give that same briefing and additional information to the council on May 8th. So the next month is really going to be digesting Mark's report that's due next week. Our plan is to issue the draft master plan toward the end of July. That's a tentative date right now, but once we issue that updated master plan, we'll kind of go through the same process in July and August of meeting with the DMMA and the tenants to go over what's in that draft plan, get any feedback, make any adjustments in September, and then have our public hearings beginning in October for the master plan adoption by the council. So I think that pretty well sums up our presentation. Would love to dialogue now about any concerns or questions you have.
Just, I see you, Deputy Mayor Mahoney. Just really quick, do you happen to have a slide or there were some asks, but it was unclear what you're looking for the committee to, there was 3 of them, if I remember right. So slip size.
Well, I'm not really asking anything tonight from the committee. I'm putting these questions on the table. We want to be able to, I wanted to make you aware of some of the things that we think are going to be issues to be thinking about. We'll have further discussion with members of the DMMA, marina tenants, other marina stakeholders about some of these things that we've suggested tonight. So I'm not asking for direction on those until we talk more with the community, but just wanted you to be aware of some of the questions we're going to be talking with the community about.
Okay.
We do plan to, over the next 4 to 6 weeks, begin to advertise and interview and select, the engineer and an architect for those 2 areas that I mentioned. We'll have to, negotiate a scope of work and contracts, and those would come forward to council probably sometime in May or early June to approve some of that work. But we need to start in on doing some selection. That's what we plan to do here soon.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
Unless you tell me no, that's what we plan to do on that schedule. So.
No, perfect. I just want to make sure that any policy questions that you need direction on tonight, we take care of. Seeing that there's none, I'll just open it up. Deputy Mayor Mahoney, you have some questions.
Thank you. So I kind of know the answer to this, but we have probably a few people that may not. So I'm going to ask the question on the covered moorage. The new big issue is the environmental issue about sunlight reaching the water, correct? And this is where this has become a new sticking point for an obstacle to covered moorage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it has to be like 75 or 70% of the space or area has to be covered or be able to have sunlight hit it or something along those lines, correct?
Yeah. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't know the exact number offhand right now, but yes, over water coverage, you have to have light penetration for any sea life and everything else. And so when you're talking the roofs on top and you're talking the docks themselves, there's going to be a serious balance there that we have to find out.
Okay, that's what I figured, but I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. Now, I love the multi-purpose building concept myself. I think that you guys have taken into account being aesthetically pleasing views and coming up with a resource to generate more revenue that we're going to need to maintain this enterprise fund. So in particular, sometimes in our city, misconceptions and mistruths and misrepresentations can get out. How are we going to reach out to the condo owners to, one, educate them about the need for the marina to make more money so it's there for them, and 2, how we've taken into account all of these entities to make it aesthetically pleasing yet functional? Is there going to be is there a plan to that yet, or are you still forming that?
Great question, Deputy Mayor Mahoney. Scott and Katie, and when they let me join, I get to every now and again, we'll come to the DMMA board meetings and we'll update them on kind of what we're doing. And we'll continue to do that. My thought would be that we would have a specific meeting with those condo owners about what our plans are, specific to their concern about views and aesthetics and some of those things. There's several different stakeholders along this. And so addressing them each and individually helps kind of keep the focus with that particular stakeholder group where it needs to be. Otherwise it gets a little unruly to manage. But my hope would be to have a meeting specifically with those condo owners. That was my intent.
Chair Nutting, if I may.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor, so I just wanted to also add to in responding to your question, I thought it was striking when we had the public community event at the yacht club, the degree of support, because primarily those were the residents along the cliffs there who were at that event. And I would say, from what I heard, it was at least 90% or more of people very positive. And I think that there's a couple of things, you know, it's a two-way street. And so it's not that there's anything that's being taken from those condo owners, because they're going to have access to the marina. They walk out their door, there's steps, eventually in a private building, there'll be public access with an elevator. They can do the switchbacks, there'll be coffee shops, there'll be green roofs. There's a lot of things that I think will be of benefit. And the other thing is that, you know, from all the research we've done, when you develop things like marinas or downtowns next to condos or apartments, whatever, the value of those residences goes up because they've got, you know, these great amenities within their proximity. So, and you know, certainly we want to take into account their concerns, but on the other hand, it's a great demonstration of the whole concept of public-private partnership and working with, you know, Robert and doing an RFQ for a hotel, but this is our part of it. And that should help in all directions. So just kind of build on what Dan said. I totally agree with that.
And I
know
agree.
you've had meetings, you and I know Mayor Pina have had meetings with those guys, and that's great, you know, and we love that and we want dialogue.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you guys have really taken the concerns into account. But like I said, it's just the message coming straight from you rather than a third party that seems to manipulate a little bit. I'll just put it that way.
Don't be explicit.
So Deputy Mayor, I just want to add on to something here to make sure that we're really clear. So this multi-purpose structure building would be owned, managed, and maintained by the marina.
Yep.
And we would issue the leases for the spaces that we would make.
Right.
I know there's been some discussions about on the other redevelopment that we might do some kind of public-private partnership and maybe even sell part of that land as an incentive for that development. That's not what we're talking about here. We would have complete control of this facility and the land and the leases.
I like it. The other, I just compliment. I know that one of the stakeholders is the Des Moines Marine Association, and I know you guys have taken the time to work with them independently. I know you've liked their constructive feedback, and I just want to say thank you that you've partnered with them in particular. I think they're a great voice, especially for the water side, and just wholehearted thank you for doing that.
Yeah, they've been great stakeholders and are good folks to work with. We get some great ideas from them, and we'll continue to work with them very closely moving forward on this.
I do have one question that kind of came up. And first off, I want to thank Marina staff for the presentation. That was great. Thanks, guys, and city staff for that. You had mentioned that possibly if we got the funding for M&N, that we might be able to do one of E, F, and G docks as well. Has it been thought about that, since we're talking about eliminating dock space, that possibly doing the building first and then the third dock, and that money would go to the demolition of that dock, because we're going to have to lose dock space to get the 50-foot boats in there. So I don't think we would want to build a brand new dock just to demo it later.
Yeah, you're keying in on something that's really important, and it's the timing of what happens down at E, F, and G. The multi-purpose building really needs to be in place so that we have a place to take the smaller boats off the water, and so we don't lose that revenue, and they don't lose the functionality and service of having their boats at the marina. So the timing of that is really key. And And as we may even look at the potential, whether it works this way or not, but we could actually phase the construction of that building, where the important part, at least for functionality of the marina, is to get the building that's up against that bluff in place so that we have that dry stack storage in operation before we do anything at EF and G. One other point I forgot to mention was with that building layout that I've shown, you know, one of the issues and concerns has been the stability of that slope. So having a structure in the front of that slope, there may be ways that we could partner with the condos to help shore up their slope there. So that may be a benefit to them that they would be interested in. Anyway.
Great idea, Dan.
Yes, and I know even maybe that it's not a fully enclosed stack storage. I worked about 15 years ago with a fully enclosed stack storage RV/boat storage in Sumner, and getting the fire department to buy off on it, as well as all the building officials, the amount of fire protection and aux sensors and all sorts of stuff was almost impossible to do. So I would urge you maybe to look at not a fully enclosed stack storage, and then somehow demising that fully enclosed structure from the opened air covered stack storage.
That's a great point. Certainly something that we can, and part of the need to get an architect on board to help us with the layout of that and to make sure that it encompasses and incorporates all of these different elements that are important to the public, important to the boaters, important to the condo owners and the city. It's going to be quite a task. So getting an architect on board early will help with that for sure.
I'm absolutely on board with that. Is there any other council member that would like to bring anything up or any more input from staff on this?
Katie, I want to thank you and Scott and Dan. I know you put a lot of work into this. You've answered actually all of my questions. Some great points were brought out by the chair and deputy mayor. So looking forward to the presentation at the council meeting and hopefully being able to move forward, like you said, with at least the architectural design.
Yeah, so we'll, as soon as the phase 2 report gets issued, we'll let the council and folks know that that's out there. We do plan to update the full council. We've had 2 or 3 meetings now with this committee. So on the 8th, I'll probably give a quick 10-minute introduction to kind of some of the things that we've talked about over the last 3 months. And then Mark Bunzel will present his report after that on the 8th. So that's our plan anyway.
Very good. Council, we're good with everything. Was there, and now that we do have an extra 10 minutes, if staff's okay with it, is there any question that was unasked from the other 2 presentations that we need to go back on? Councilmember Banks?
Can we just go back to the Van Gaskin really quick? I realize that the rendition that you showed did show that we were able to do something with that area that currently is an untouchable area. So did you get authorization to move forward with that?
Yeah, in fact, most of are you talking to the north? We don't.
I'm talking right to what we were looking at in terms of where all the plastic is, the black.
Yeah, our
plastic.
permitting.
Yeah. That's our whole permitting process. And we're basically going to leave the plastic and bring dirt in and fill it up. And so at the end of the day, that was part of our permitting. Everywhere, essentially where you see plastic, the whole ground is going to rise, if you will, as we bring in dirt from as much as 1 foot on the north end to upwards of 3 or 4 feet on the southern end. And we'll have some little walls. But yeah, we're going to cover that up.
Awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Mayor Mahoney, is there anything else from you?
Nope, not at this time.
Anything else staff would like to add to anything? All right, well, I don't know if I gotta take a vote to adjourn the meeting early, but
So moved.
Second.
all right, it looks like we're adjourned. Staff, thank you so much. What an awesome job. Great presentations tonight and look forward to seeing it at council. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.